Hey everyone, Jim Coventry from RotoWire here. Getting ready to talk some Super Bowl with everybody. Let me get things set up here. Got to retweet this out. I'm going from the RotoWire page. You should be able to see this both on Twitter and on YouTube. And again, I'm going to retweet this out real quick. So I just need a moment to do that. Very excited about this weekend game. Cannot wait to see the Bengals and the Rams play. Should be a very competitive game. Hopefully, that's exactly what we're hoping for here. I will break this game down from both sides of the ball, and I'm retweeting this out right now. All right, good to go there. All right, excited to see anybody who's here. Let me get everything set up, and we'll be ready to go. I just gotta get my I always like to have my notes out here so I can make sure I'm staying on point. Otherwise, you get off point and maybe not so good. Okay, so when we break this game down, the first thing we'll go one side at a time, and then we'll go from there. If you have questions, feel free to ask me. You can drop them in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer questions as we go as well. So always happy to do that. Just trying to set one more thing here. Okay. Real close to go here. I'm going to talk about some props today as well. Definitely always want to talk some Super Bowl props. Everybody has a different interest in those. Props, the first thing I want to tell you is that props, there are two ways to look at them. The competitive props are the ones that we're looking to have an edge on, to make some money on. And then there are other props that are fun props. And sometimes for the Super Bowl, we just want to have a little bit of fun. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so as long as you understand the difference between the props, that's really important to understand. So we will begin with breaking down one side of the ball at a time. And we'll start with the Bengals. Now, this game, the line has mostly stayed at -4. I saw some -4.5 today, so the line's moving a little bit. Over and under has been at 48.5. I'm just going to double check right now and just see on DraftKings what it's at, and I imagine it's still going to stay static there. If you are a DraftKings member and you're watching the show live, I think we actually may have just expired. You may have another hour to get today's option boost. It's Joe Mixon up to +100 to get 10 yards rushing in the first quarter. And the line is 4. So 4 and 48.5. So that line that was at 4.5 was very short-lived. So the Bengals offensive side of the ball. First of all, this is the thing that everybody's talked about all week, and I want to make sure that you get my take on this as well. So first of all, the Rams had the top pressure rate in the league, and that's not understated in any way. And that's over the course of the season. And the beauty of the line, they often will put a 5-man front up, and they'll create pressure with the 5. We'll talk about how they may not utilize that here. But the point is, when you have Aaron Donald, in my opinion, is one of the small room Hall of Fame type. He will go down as one of the greatest defensive linemen ever to play the game. And in my mind, there's very little bit to dispute that. And not only do you have him wrecking the game from the inside, but you have Von Miller, who's back to playing at a high level. He's a definite Hall of Famer as well. And on the other side, we have Leonard Floyd, who is a very good pass rusher in his own right, especially when defenses have to focus on Aaron Donald. And again, since the trade deadline or a little before that, Von Miller. So it's a 3-man attack that they can really bury people with. Now you can get Greg Gaines, Ashawn Robinson causing pressure from the middle as well. But nonetheless, it's those obvious 3 components that really move the needle. Now, we can't skate around this, that the Bengals offensive line is very, very poor. They're worst on the right side. And my guess is that the Rams come into this game loading up the right side. So that would be Von Miller and Aaron Donald on the inside would look to crush that side of the pocket. Not the pocket, of the line. And by crushing that, they are going to put an unreasonable amount of pressure on Joe Burrow. Now, the first thing that we have to look at is the Bengals obviously know this. Now, how do they get around it? And this is where we start. The linebacking crew of the Rams is not good in pass coverage. They're a bottom 10 unit against receiving backs. So, in my opinion, one way to take advantage of that weakness and also mitigating the pass rush at the same time is throwing screens to the running back. Hopefully, the Bengals choose to put Joe Mixon on the field most of the time. They did win, obviously, the game against the Chiefs. Samaje Perine, for the first time in like 5 weeks, had more targets than Mixon. I thought that was a little problematic. Now, the team from that result made me think they may trust P. Ryan a little more in pass protection. That was the only logical point that seemed to work there. And so, but Mixon, and I know P. Ryan scored a 40-yard touchdown. I understand that. But obviously, Joe Mixon is by far a superior player. We know that. Doesn't take any genius to figure that out. But he's also much better as a receiver. And I think the pass protection, although important, dumping the ball off and that outlet, Joe Mixon could be a very, very big factor in this game. Now, the person who we hear about getting picked on is Troy Reeder, the linebacker of the Rams. Not a good pass coverage player. It was interesting. I had heard on a show earlier today, Eric Weddle has been playing safety, came out of retirement. He's going to be the signal caller on defense in this game. But yet the Rams are getting back Taylor Rapp, the safety who missed 3 games with a concussion. So what I had heard was the possibility exists that they could rotate one of those 2 safeties, Weddle and Rapp, get them both in the game, and maybe replace one with Reeder on occasion. And if that's the case, that could take a little bit of that advantage that the Bengals have in that scenario away. Now, we also mentioned earlier, the Rams do like to run 5-man fronts. I think that would be a mistake in this game. They like the 5-man fronts to create extra pressure on the quarterback. But with the advantage they have over the Bengals offensive line, it's overkill. They want to have an extra body in coverage. We've seen throughout the playoffs, Joe Burrow is very good. They'll run empty sets sometimes. They almost always run 11 personnel, which means 3 receivers on the field. And Joe Burrow has been outstanding at getting the ball out quickly, identifying the quick read, making the throw. We mentioned earlier screens to Mixon. Screens to the receivers are not a bad proposition, especially Jamar Chaser. And getting that going, some jet motion, anything to slow the rush, but also get the ball out. But the Rams, back to going with a 4-man front instead of a 5-man front, that allows them to drop 7 into coverage automatically instead of having 6 in coverage. And they could flood the shorter area of the field, knowing that pass rush could get home quickly. And running in the interior, I still think the Rams can penetrate the line so significantly that they will have an excellent opportunity to slow the inside run. I think, and we'll continue to build on it. So Burrow wants to get out quickly. The Rams will want to go with 4-man fronts, as I said earlier, to get an extra man in coverage. But that still goes back to the screen game. But let's add on the Joe Mixon point. Getting Mixon to run on the outside, on Leonard Floyd's side, even Von Miller's side, both very good pass rushers, but that's where their strength is at. I think the Bengals can get a better opportunity running on the edges. They don't want to run up the middle much here. Aaron Donald's there. Could be A'Shawn Robinson, Greg Gaines. They really don't want to challenge the middle too much. They should. Occasionally, you have to go there to keep the defense honest, but I really think they want to get that run game to the outside. And it doesn't have to have wild success rate. We just said earlier, we're going to mix in some screens to Chase. We're going to mix in some jet motion, maybe run Chase, quick hitters to T. Higgins. And so it's going to have to be that focus on getting the ball very quickly into the playmaker's hands. The Rams, on the other hand, are going to want to get contact quickly with any receivers in the route, jam them, so to speak. And by jamming them, that gives the opportunity for that pass rush to collapse the pocket extremely fast. So that's going to be important. Back to Mixon in the run game. Again, the more they can run with and get a little bit of success, it could force the Rams back into more 5-man fronts. And that's where the Bengals would really like to see them. Now, Joe Burrow is a small sample size. Football is the ultimate small sample sport. So understanding based on that small sample, Joe Burrow was number 3 against man-to-man defenses this year. He was number 14 against zones. Now, different sites will have those numbers a little bit up, but they're pretty close to the reality of what it is. And the Rams do play a lot of zone. Every team mixes some zone and some man. But I do think the Rams are going to understand that zone needs to be the primary focus here. You know, I forgot to click the comments tab on. Oh, my gosh. So I wonder if I have any comments here. Let's see here. No, it doesn't look like it yet. So we're good there. Okay. So that probably is open anyway. So as I was saying, Joe Burrow is a bit more of a disadvantage against zone. And what the Rams can do within that zone, there are a few things. I can't tell you for sure if they're going to put Jamar Chase on. I'm sorry, put man, I'm losing my mind here. Jalen Ramsey on Jamar Chase. I can't tell you that's going to happen for sure. But I do think the one place where Chase can be beat is the deep game. And it's not a deficiency, but it's a place you can get to him a little bit more. And so I think ultimately with Jamar Chase being a great downfield receiver, now again, we go back to the passers. The pass rush is getting home. How much does that work? But I think the Rams are likely going to go into this game with the concept of bracketing coverage over the top. They want to drop 7 into coverage. They want to play different zone shells, but again, keeping the action in front of them. As I mentioned earlier, getting physical with the receivers at the line a little bit so that Burrow struggles to get it out as quickly as it likes. Take that away, put him under a little more duress. I think that is the way the Rams are going to attack. Tyler Boyd is, of course, a great option. CJ Uzomah, it's not by the numbers a great tight end matchup. The Rams project well against tight ends. It's hard to envision a world where CJ Uzomah is a factor here because the problem is that he has a sprained MCL 2 weeks ago. To think he's going to come in and be a full go. Will he be on the field? It sounds like it. But I don't think he's going to have any type of explosive. It's going to be very difficult to cut. And I think if he's on the field significantly, I think the Rams are going to realize this pretty quickly. But I think this is a detriment to have a player who may be playing at a fraction of his usefulness on the field. So Tyler Boyd, in theory, has a decent slot matchup. Jalen Ramsey has been on the outside much more in the playoffs. Now, was that a function of Mike Evans in the Tampa Bay game and really no other receivers to worry about? That may have had a lot to do with that configuration. And they played Arizona, and Arizona wasn't much of a threat to them on any level, and they didn't have any receiver to get worried about. So there are some mitigating factors. And then the 49ers is just really an odd offensive attack, a great offensive attack, but an odd one. So I think the matchups they had, I don't know how much that really tells us about how they plan to use Ramsey. But down the stretch, they did use him more on the outside than they had earlier in the season. I do think that he will probably see more usage on the outside than the inside, but I don't think it's a shadow situation. I could see Ramsey playing aside, the other side bracketing help, Ramsey maybe not needing bracket. If Ramsey somehow was assigned to T. Higgins, that's a matchup that Ramsey could consistently have an advantage on. And then if you ganged up on Chase, that would be an advantage. I don't think they'd be overly worried that Tyler Boyd is going to sink them. So I think that that's not a concern. Certainly he can make plays. Certainly he's a very good receiver, but he's not a game breaker. So I think the Rams could live with that. So that's something to consider as well. Outside of that, what else do I want to mention on this thing? But T. Higgins still. If wherever Jalen Ramsey is at, Cincinnati should be able to attack the other areas. Yes, they'll have bracket coverage. They'll have some safety over the top. But getting T. Higgins involved on some in-breakers. T. Higgins is a very big player. He's a very special player, extremely talented. In my mind, he's an alpha receiver as well. And I do think they can create a lot of positive situations with T. Higgins. And T. Higgins certainly can have a big game. Again, if there are plays when Ramsey's on him, it's not that Ramsey can shut him out, but Ramsey would significantly limit him. But then on those plays, it would be important to scheme the ball to Chase. I said earlier, jet sweeps, screens, knowing they may not have much to get over the top. They'll have to be creative in how they utilize that. So overall, those are the components that I really wanted to stress on the Bengals side of the football. In terms of how they'll perform, look, throughout the playoffs, this has been a primary field goal team. They've kicked 4 field goals in each game. They had a low-scoring win against the Titans. The game against the Raiders had allowed the most red zone percentage of touchdowns in the league, and yet here was Cincinnati kicking field goals. Now, the Chiefs game, beautiful win by Cincinnati. But the game was on projecting to be a blowout for the Chiefs. And say what you will, but I think to a degree, the Chiefs choked a little bit. Did the Bengals make great adjustments? Yes, they made great adjustments. But it's not like dropping 8 was something new that Mahomes hadn't seen. So the Chiefs did not make good adjustments. The Bengals did play a good portion of dropping 8 in the first half. They just dialed it up almost close to 50% in the second half. And Mahomes fell back into the bad habit of looking to just throw the ball downfield. So we get back to this game. It's been a field goal offense primarily. The Rams by far are the best defense they'll see in this playoffs. And nowhere in the stratosphere is anybody else close. Tennessee had the good pass rush going. Obviously, the Rams' pass rush is significantly better. The Rams do have weaknesses at linebacker. They are not shut down at corner outside of Jalen Ramsey. So there are worlds in which the offense can get some things going. I just think the overwhelming disadvantage of an offensive line, if they're going to be in some bad down and distance situations, those obvious passing downs are going to be very problematic for the Bengals. I think it's going to be difficult for them to sustain a lot of drives. They're going to have to come out with some creative plays, some creative usage. I mentioned it 2 or 3 times already. Jet motion, swing screens to Jamar Chase, but being very smart and attacking perceived weaknesses. Joe Mixon, I mentioned earlier, screens out of the backfield. They've got to take those advantages and hammer away at them and hope the Rams try to make adjustments to those, and then Zach Taylor and the coaching staff can make changes back. So definitely there are paths, but Cincinnati's going to be very flexible in their game plan. Now the Rams on offense here. So first of all, we love what the Bengals defense has done. They have thrown a lot of confusing looks at their opponents. They've made offenses struggle for the most part. Now they played Tennessee, and Tennessee, and I know they had Derrick Henry back for that game, but it was a very disjointed offense for much of the season. So they played very well. I don't know how tough the opponent was. Kansas City had scored at will on 3 straight drives. I believe it was 3 out of 4. And then they had that drive that was killed at the 1 yard line. So they were moving the ball exceedingly well. And then the second half happened, but you still give the Bengals credit for that. And then the Raiders offense, not a juggernaut. Let's just leave it at that. Not a juggernaut. So the Bengals did what the Bengals needed to do. Now, it's not like the Rams, as we're going to talk about now, they're not the end of the world beaters on offense, but they do have some things that are going to be very difficult. And again, aside from the Chiefs, this is I think, you know what? I'm going to say this. In terms of balancing and taking advantage of what defenses give them, the Rams will be the best offense they'll face in the playoffs. I'm not saying they're better than the Chiefs. Understand that. But the Chiefs had a chance to keep running. They were getting 6 yards a pop out of McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then when the dropping of the 8 in the second half and the Chiefs were still playing with the lead and the game was close, they refused to run the football. And it was that stubbornness that really bit them quite a bit. And the Rams, on the other hand, they're not averse to running the ball. They ran the ball in games they shouldn't have been running the ball, even as late as the first or second week of the playoffs, the Tampa Bay game. There were times they shouldn't have been running the ball, and they did. Sean McVay has no problem calling the runs. And against the Bengals are probably going to try to drop 7 or 8. They are not going to want to get beat by Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham and Matthew Stafford. I think they would prefer to see the dropping of the players, dare the Rams to run. Maybe they'll hope the Rams running game hasn't been explosive enough, which it hasn't been. And then by having the extra bodies in the secondary, hoping that Matthew Stafford makes a mistake or two. And like we said earlier, they've been very good at disguising looks on defense. So that could cause problems for the entirety of the operation. So now we go back to the offense. So Cam Akers, we're not completely sure. We can't definitively say who is going to take all the work here. Cam Akers had fumbles in the Tampa Bay game. The ineffectiveness, they were running against a defense looking for it, good defense. They played the 49ers, hard to run on them. But Akers has been far more efficient than Sony Michel. Now, Darrell Henderson is active, making if he's healthy, a nice complement with the speed that he brings to the game. So I think that's a very important element that they may be able to add into it. So as to what they do, I think Akers is still going to see the lion's share of the work here. And I do think he's going to have some success. The importance here is I don't think you want to run the ball up the middle a lot against DJ Reader and BJ Hill. And then Larry Ogunjobi's been out. He injured his foot in the first round of the playoffs. I do think when you have the mind of Trey Hendrickson And, Sam Hubbard's good against the run, but if they want to get in that mindset of pass rushing, I think you want to run at the outside zone. And the Rams are good at running outside zone. They're able to do this. And I think getting to the outside, I think this is where their advantage is going to be, because the Bengals will like to drop players to stop the passing game, and they're good at crashing players down. But Cam Akers is a powerful back who can get yards after contact, and I think they can consistently gain yardage similar to what we were getting from the Chiefs. That 6 yards a pop last week. That whole area was open. And so I think that'll be there. And I do think Sean McVay will hammer that home. Now, in terms of the receivers, the Bengals are very good in their zones. They're very disciplined. As I said earlier, they're able to disguise some coverages. But the Rams present some unique challenges. Cooper Kupp obviously won the Triple Crown at receiver this year. He's continued that in the playoffs. Well, he can run any route from any formation and place on the field. They also, Sean McVay and the offense, are very good at getting Cooper Kupp in stacks, 2 or 3 receiver stacks, to get him free release from the line. And Cooper Kupp is literally another coach on the field. And he runs what we call these choice routes, where when the play starts, he's able to leverage the coverages, and he goes to where it's not. And Matthew Stafford, again, being an extremely smart quarterback, realizes right where that void is. They read it. Kupp is open. So he's schemed open. He's smart to get open. He's physically amazing to get open, but also the chemistry between the quarterback and the receiver make him impossible to stop. And so when the Rams, especially when they see the Bengals in a zone, they know where they can get that connection when they need it. And don't think for a minute, of course, the Bengals are going to come in with a plan to try to slow down Cooper Kupp. But what we've seen this year, it's not something that you're just going to come up in a lab and say, oh, we figured it out. We stopped Cooper Kupp. Not going to happen. Now, will they diminish? If they diminish his targets, his numbers will be lower. I just don't see a scenario where the Bengals have the personnel to take advantage of that. Now, before we get to Odell Beckham, let's talk about Matthew Stafford. So, first of all, Matthew Stafford, we know, is outstanding against the blitz. He struggles when teams bring a 3 or 4 man rush and produce pressure with that, especially the 3-man rushes. He struggled with that, finding the reads against 8-man secondaries, which we know earlier we said the Bengals did that a lot against the Chiefs, but they also did that a lot in the second half of the season. It wasn't like a staple, but they did it more than most teams. So that is something that they have in their arsenal and they'll use. But don't think with 2 weeks to prepare that Sean McVay has not prepared beaters for those zones that they're going to see, and he will be ready for much of that. So again, we talk about Kupp being able to get open, and Matthew Stafford, though, we get back to this. So again, great against the blitz, struggles against the shorter line rush, 3 or 4 men. But the one advantage I really think the Rams have here, and we're assuming Andrew Whitworth is now closer to 100% with a couple more weeks off. He had injured his knee a few weeks back, did play in the conference championship game. So ultimately, the pass rush comes from Hendrickson and to a lesser degree from Sam Hubbard. I believe the strength of the Rams' offensive line and pass protection is the tackles. And so that is where it becomes a little bit problematic, because if they can't get pressure with their outside rush, the Rams are going to give Stafford plenty of time. And that is where the problem comes in for the Bengals. If Stafford has time, they will find holes despite 8 players being dropped, if that's what they choose to do. Now, Odell Beckham he's a true X receiver, meaning he could be lined up on the single side of the formation, often against a team's best cornerback. And Odell Beckham has shown the ability to separate against all types of coverage. The longer he's been at the Rams, the more he's been acclimated into their system. And what I like best is, so the 3-year receiver set on the one side, that's usually the front side. That's the side of the play where they're looking to make things happen. But what happens is when you don't get a rush on Stafford and the 3-man, bunch, it gets gummed up. They have Odell Beckham on the backside of the formation. And what he's been really great at doing is running what we call the backside digs, where he cuts an in-breaking route. And being he's very difficult to cover, he has great hands, and he has the ability to create after the catch. And so these are things that the Rams are not, the Bengals are not going to be able to commit bodies to him. If they put an extra body on Odell Beckham, the 3-man stack on the other side becomes even more problematic. Now, Van Jefferson will likely be used as a deep threat. It's looking like Tyler Higbee won't play. Now, Kendall Blanton, he's put up numbers. Last week, he did put up good numbers. In terms of how he projects it, Higbee is an excellent receiver. But the small bit we've seen from Blanton, he's been effective. So certainly a downgrade, but he may be functional in this offense. So I do think Blanton will be the guy in there. Ben Scaronick, he's a great blocker. He did drop a long potential touchdown pass in the conference championship game. But I do think that what we're looking at here is the ability to use Jefferson in there. And Jefferson's getting like an average depth of target of 17. Now, he hasn't had hardly any catches in the last few games, 1 or 2 per game, but he had an 87 and a 90% snap share. So he's on the field. And if the Rams run some play action, he can get downfield, especially again with the defense being very concerned with Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham. So I do like Van Jefferson to be for a fun prop bet. Not the serious ones are ones that we think we have an edge, but I do like that prop bet of Van Jefferson for a touchdown here. Now, an area where Cincinnati is weak on defense is the slot. They are in the bottom 10 in both catch rate given up to the slot and yards per target in the slot, and Cooper Kupp plays the slot 73% of the time. And so basically Cooper Kupp plays into one of the primary weaknesses of the Bengals defense. As we said earlier, if they overcommit to stop him, then they open things up for Odell Beckham, Van Jefferson, and even Cam Akers in the screen game. So it's going to be very, very difficult for looking into how that's going to work out for them. So Cincinnati also, per DVOA, Football Outsiders, they rank 25th on passes 15 yards or more downfield. They have struggled against the deeper passes. So this is not looking like a great situation for them. However, 11 of Matthew Stafford's 17 interceptions have come on deep passes. So there is a little bit of maybe risk that Sean McVay may be a little bit nervous to take unless something presents itself that's a very easy pass, especially with Van Jefferson, where it may be one of those things where we're seeing single coverage, and then I think Stafford would be willing to take that. He has underthrown some deep passes down the stretch I've seen. So it's an attackable scenario, but I don't know much they do. Another area the Bengals struggle in is play action and the quarterback rollout. And Matthew Stafford is able to do this, and this is something that is built into the Rams offense that they're able to do. So I do think we will see some of this, and creating hesitation on the linebackers, especially when they're dropping 7 or 8 in the coverage and trying to deal with the 3-man bunch sets. So I think they have an advantage there. Now, Bengals per Football Outsiders DVOA are bottom 5 against tight ends. And so, again, Kendall Blanton likely to play and Higbee likely out. It still is a really good matchup for Blanton here, considering he'll be a full-time player. The Rams should keep him in there. We may see Bryson Hopkins in on some plays, but I think that the player we're going to see is going to be, Blanton should be able to see a decent number of catches here, 3 to 5 catches for sure, I would think, because again, it's an advantage that they have. So all this said, I mentioned earlier the Bengals, they do kick a lot of field goals, and that is problematic because they're going to need to score, more touchdowns and field goals in this game. Not like the Rams are going to score a ton of points here. The Rams, I do think the Rams are going to be very hard for the Bengals to deal with. Their pass rush is going to struggle to get home against the tackles. I believe with Kupp and Beckham, it's going to be a little bit much to handle. And I do think that when the Bengals go to sell out to stop the pass, that they're going to have very significant problems with Cam Akers as a runner. They're going to be big chunks of yardage to be had, and Sean McVay will take those. And if the defense doesn't come out of those heavy secondary looks, then he's going to keep running, and he's going to take what's given him. If the defense finally decides to address it and crash in, then I think that the Rams could take advantage of the passing game. So I think they're going to be able to dictate here. Now, overall, in terms of the score of this game, the score that I projected is 27-19 Rams. However, this is important for fans. I want you to know that these teams played 10 times. I fully believe the Bengals would win 3 and the Rams would win 7. And therefore, any team can win this game. I think the Rams do rate an advantage, but this is a reasonably fair matchup. So I definitely like that. All right, let me tell you a few of the prop bets that I've taken here. Now, always with props, understand I've rationalized these out through my game scripts. Some of them you're going to like. If it's one that you hear and you resonate with, go ahead and play it. If one that you're thinking, maybe I don't buy the logic so much, and that's probably one that you're gonna keep off of a little bit. So first of all, I do think that, so a little more than 3-1 odds. This is a fun prop. All right. This is a fun prop. This is when you're betting if you're going to have fun with the game. A defensive special teams touchdown by either team gets you better than 3-1 odds. I like that one because, especially with the Rams side, if the Rams have a lead and if the Bengals have to get into a place where they're one-dimensional, have to pass, between Aaron Donald and Von Miller, the chance for a strip sack, fumble six, pressure into a pick six, those are very real in this game. If you don't think the Rams are going to win, I certainly Matthew Stafford throws interceptions, but I don't know that he's throwing a pick six. So he may be a little more downfield. The pressure might not be there to get those throws that are in the critical areas to turn at. So that's a fun bet for sure. A bet that, well, this one was a profit boost. I'm not going to talk about it. I said earlier, another fun bet is Van Jefferson for an anytime TD. Again, getting a little better than 3-1 odds on that. I think that's fantastic. I think a nice fair bet is going to be Joe Burrow under 11.5 rush yards. He was able to get away from the Chiefs pass rush last week. But typically, Burrow, if he does run on occasion, he's looking just to get to the sticks, get what he can there. But I don't think he's going to have a lot of room to run, and I think he's going to want to get down quickly with the 3 pass rushers the Rams have. And the Rams are not the type of pass rush that are going to let you spring loose. Yes, you may spring loose. Aaron Donald gets his hands on you. It's unlikely. And I know he had a slip up in the other game a couple of weeks ago, but overall, I just don't see him making that mistake. And especially if they force him to the outside, you got Von Miller and Leonard Floyd who are there to clean up. It's not like the Bengals can, stifle one of them and then open that space up. So I like that, that idea of there. Now, I got this at plus 110 odds, like 3 days after the Super Bowl was set up. But now it's probably minus 140 or more. It was the Rams to post more than 3.5 sacks. Somebody pointed out the Rams only have 5 sacks in the playoffs. You got to throw that out. Tom Brady wasn't going to get hit. He was getting that ball out immediately. San Francisco, they had a game plan that was designed to not get the pass rush. They're going to run the ball. They're going to get the ball out quickly. No issue there. So this is a different game because the significant huge advantage between the lines, offensive and the defensive line. And should the Bengals trail, even if they don't trail, and they're in any down and distance situations, it's going to be a terrible day because that offensive line is getting pushed backwards very, very quickly. It could be a very ugly situation here. Now, these props are juiced up, but if you don't want to go to 3.5 props, Aaron Donald for a full sack or more, and Von Miller for a full sack. I think those are 2 excellent ones that you can go with. Another prop that I like here is the Bengals to kick the longest field goal of the game. We saw Matt Gay come up short on a 47-yarder or a 48-yarder in the playoffs, but we know that the Bengals are willing to put out Evan McPherson well over 50-yard kicks. So I do think that is a great opportunity for them to kick the longest field goal. And another one I like, and this is like for a $10 bet, is paying $25.50, and it's more than 2.5 players attempting a pass. I like that one because I do think in these Super Bowls, we see a lot of these plays where we see somebody else throw the ball. Now, the Rams, over the years, Johnny Hecker, the punter, will throw the ball on occasion. We've seen them in the recent past. Odell Beckham's thrown a pass, and, you pull out the stops in the Super Bowl. And so I think getting misdirection and players, over pursuing, I think it's always a good bet when you have teams that you have some good game planning. I think that's going to be part of keeping the defense on the heel. So I like that one a lot. Another bet I like is I like the Rams to post more first downs than the Bengals. If the Bengals are still doing well offensively, I think it's going to be more on the back of bigger plays, shorter play amount drives. Whereas I think that the Rams are going to be willing to run the ball, especially against 7 and 8 man secondaries. And I think they're going to be more matriculating the ball on the field. So regardless of how the game shakes out, I think they are going to post more first downs without much of a problem there. Now, obviously, based on my score prediction, I do like the Rams -4, and I like under 48.5. Now, with my projection being 27-19, I'm projecting the Rams to win by 8. But you could get almost 5-1 odds if you're betting the Rams to win by 7-12. So that's something there. Now, Higgins, It's tough to predict the receivers for over and under because we don't know how Jalen Ramsey's going to play. We don't know if they'll put him on one side and they'll bracket up the other side. But I do have to think that Jamar Chase will get significantly more attention because I think the Rams would see him as the massive threat to worry about. So I do like T. Higgins over the yardage prop, which is in the mid 60s right now. It won't take him much to get there. And with the in-breaking routes, his ability to get yardage after the catch. And we know Joe Burrow will occasionally take downfield shots to him as well. So I do think that's a very, very strong bet. I know it's a layup bet, but Cooper Kupp over 100.5 yards. I do worry the Rams may run more than we like, but it'd be hard to think they wouldn't showcase Cooper Kupp in this game with the season on the line, making sure that he is a big part of the offense. And he has been like borderline unstoppable all year. So I like that one as well. Well, I hope everybody enjoys the game. I'll be on the Sirius XM RotoWire show from 1 to 3 Eastern, both on Saturday and Sunday. So please join there. Tomorrow Saturday I'll be on with Mario Puig, and Sunday I'll be on with Jeff Erickson. So that'll be great. And otherwise, everybody enjoy the game. If you have any questions, hit me up at Jim Coventry NFL on Twitter. Have a great night, everybody.